Sup, guys? So back with you yet again. It's Wednesday, March 12th, as college basketball championship week continues to heat up. I don't continue to heat up. I thought I was with that 4-0 day 2 days ago. It's been just zigzagging days, basically. I was, 0-5 the day before that, 4-0, and then yesterday 1-3 after thought my hot streak was continuing with that easy win on Cincinnati, and then we went into the night last night. Not good. Both hockey plays lost. Tampa Bay, they were never going to win that game. The other game was close. Philadelphia, they were in that game. They had a tied game for a while, and they wound up just losing it in the end. But, man, playing them as an underdog, probably the right play, I guess. I mean, the spot set up for it. Tampa, probably I should have stayed off of it. I mean, I mentioned that yesterday. I thought that was the weakest play that made my card. I got to somehow clean this up a little bit. I'm going to have 3 college basketball plays today and 1 NBA play today, and skipping the NHL card, a short NHL card, which maybe I'm going to lose again. Who knows? I will extend congratulations to the conference tournament winners that we got last night, the auto bids. Congratulations to St. Francis, the other game that I lost. Central Connecticut State. You got to be kidding me, man. That might have been one of the worst games ever played. Neither team could score. I don't know what was going on there. If you had told me beforehand that St. Francis, PA, was only going to score, 46 points or something in the entire game, yeah, I mean, I probably would have bet my house on Central Connecticut. And, of course, I did bet on Central Connecticut. I didn't bet my house. It was just a normal bet for me. But, I mean, you hold your opponent to the 40s. I mean, that was pretty expected. That I didn't think St. Francis was going to be able to score again. They're not a very good offense at all. Central Connecticut, though, I don't know what happened with them offensively. And they wound up losing the game outright in the end. And it was a game that was close to the wire. They never could get margin in the game, and they lose the game because they give up an and one in the final, several seconds of the game. And then that forces them to try to hit a 3, which, of course, in a low-scoring game like that, they're not going to be able to do that. Both teams don't even get to 50 in the game. Unbelievable, man. Again, if you had told me St. Francis was going to wind up in the 40s, I would have thought, okay, yeah, so the final's probably 60-something to 45 or 46 or whatever, so we'll get the cover in this one. No, not at all. St. Francis, they will be the worst team in the entire tournament field. They will be in the first 4, so they will be playing in Dayton, trying to gain the honor of getting massacred by a 1 seed, which is basically what I said about Fairleigh Dickinson too. But St. Francis is not going to beat a 1 seed. Okay, we'll put that down on record. It's not going to happen. If they even get by the first 4 game, which maybe they will because they suck so bad that everybody's just going to be trashing them. I don't know who their opponent's going to be. And Central Connecticut State, if they had won, I mean, they dominated that conference, but it's such a bad conference. I had them as probably one of the 16 seeds that doesn't have to play in. Also, congratulations to Robert Morris. They won the Horizon League last night. They were the favorite there. I think they got to play at home in that game. Or no, it was in Indianapolis, right? Yeah, it was a neutral site. But they were able to get the win. They will probably be, I have them around a 15 seed. We'll see what happens there. I mean, that Horizon League is not good this year. And they were one of the better teams in it. And then we did have UNC Wilmington. Congratulations to them. They won the Colonial. They'll probably be somewhere around the 14 line in the tournament, I would expect. That Colonial's not that good either. UNC Wilmington is fairly good. I mean, they're the best team in that conference. Delaware made a huge run, man. They played very admirably again. The fact they were playing a 5th game in 5 nights after pulling off 3 upsets in a row, that was ridiculous. They were in that game again. They were down 2 in the final minutes of the game. So they had shots. They had some bad shots at the end, but they had chances to win that game. That was crazy. I believe they did wind up covering the game. Pretty insane. If Delaware had won that 5th game, they would have joined only 2011 UConn and last year's NC State as the only teams that have won 5 games in 5 nights in college basketball, which only basically happens in a conference tournament when you have a team that starts out, a team that's a very low seed that has to play on the first day, basically, and then they somehow run through the entire tournament. And, of course, those teams did not tire out. And that UConn team won the entire thing, won the championship. And NC State, we know, last year made the Final Four. So it's like when a team does that, they don't tire out. Their momentum just continues. It's crazy. All right. And then I think I'm missing one team, right? Was there one other team that won last night? Congratulations to Gonzaga. What am I saying? Gonzaga beating St. Mary's in the WCC. I thought that they probably would get that done. Both of those teams are going to get into the tournament regardless of who won that game at that point. But congratulations to them. Maybe Gonzaga will move up from like an 8 to a 7. And if they do, I'm going to be kind of mad because one of my predictions was that Gonzaga would be the highest favorite of any 8-9 game ever, and that they were going to win that game and then also knock off a 1 seed. But if they're a 7 seed, I mean, they're going to be really dangerous to whatever 2 seed they're playing. All right, let's get into today's tournament action, man. We got a lot to cover here. The A10 is starting. I mean, a lot of these games are not that interesting to me, though. I mean, Davidson is a 6.5-point favorite against Richmond. I mean, okay, what else is new? Richmond is the worst team in the A10, I would say. So, yeah, no surprise there. Davidson is the better team. Will they cover? Who knows? But they should win the game. Fordham and Rhode Island. Rhode Island got off to a hot start this year, but I think they were a bit overrated based on that start. Now they're only a 4.5-point favorite. Up to 4.5 with juice, though, against Fordham. I mean, they are still the better team against Fordham, but I think they just beat Fordham. Maybe in the last game of the season, they actually beat Fordham. So we'll see what happens there. This A10 tournament, by the way, is in Washington, D.C., so it's in a neutral site. I would expect Rhode Island maybe would get that job done because they are the better team over Fordham. Fordham not very good either, and Fordham had that weird, like, coaching scandal thing although in the middle of the season. I think their coach is back, but that was, he, like, self-suspended, basically. He suspended himself, and I think it was because he bought his players chicken wings, which was not, like, correct usage of the team's funds or something. It was something really, really ridiculous like that. And that was right after they came off that bizarre 3 overtime game against UMass, which something really strange happened in that game. I think there were just like a massive amount of fouls in that game. UMass amount of fouls. UMass is playing LaSalle, who's another really bad team in the conference, but it's not like UMass is very good. UMass down from 3 to 2.5, so the money looks like it's coming in on the LaSalle side. Again, I don't really have any opinions on these. I should stop just giving blind opinions on every game, really. But, I mean, when I don't really have a strong opinion, I mean, the market kind of indicates to me where I should be leaning in that game, but obviously no bet there. And I will let you know if I have a stronger opinion, and, of course, my bets are my strongest opinions. The ACC continues. Virginia and Georgia Tech, neither of these teams have played yet in this tournament, I don't believe. Georgia Tech up from 1-1 with juice. I agree with the Georgia Tech side here. I mean, Georgia Tech, they've actually pulled off wins against, I believe, Clemson and Louisville, I'm pretty sure. So Georgia Tech has beaten the other 2 good teams in the ACC besides Duke. So Georgia Tech, definitely not a pushover. I think they're better than they look, and I feel like the public might look at this and want to come in on Virginia just because they have that name recognition behind them and because Virginia stomped Georgia Tech in the one time they played this year, in the one game they played this year. It was at Georgia Tech, but I believe Georgia Tech was coming off that upset of Clemson, and I think that was on the road, and I think it was like they were a 13.5-point underdog, and it was a triple overtime game or something, so it was a really bad spot for Georgia Tech, so that's why Virginia beat them, although I think Virginia wasn't in a very good spot either. I mean, I can look at this one, but I do have a somewhat of an opinion on Georgia Tech here, though. Georgia Tech actually went 1-1 against Clemson, and I don't know where that Louisville game is, but they did have Stanford right after that Virginia game. The Virginia game was actually on the road, my mistake, and they'd beaten Louisville and Clemson in the 2 games leading up to that, so that's what it was. So that was definitely a bad spot and a second straight road game. So I think that's why Virginia was able to beat them there. And now Georgia Tech coming off a really ugly loss at Wake Forest. So Wake Forest really trying to do whatever to try to maybe make the tournament, although I really don't think it's going to happen unless they really make a huge run in this particular tournament. But neither of these teams have played yet in this tournament. This tournament's in Charlotte, North Carolina, at a neutral site there. So take from all that what you will. So no real advantage one way or the other as far as rest or as far as a team already having acclimated to the venue. So I like Georgia Tech just based on, I think, the result that these 2 teams had was a misleading result. And I think the lines makers have this right, and the Georgia Tech is actually the slightly better team. Notre Dame did play yesterday, and I think people are going to make fun of them because, I mean, I was kind of bashing the way that game ended with Notre Dame winning on a walk-off foul at the end. So I think people are going to probably be kind of saying Notre Dame shouldn't have won that game. So that might motivate Notre Dame a little bit coming into this game. And, I mean, they get to play North Carolina, so they're probably going to show up against North Carolina as well. Notre Dame also because they played yesterday, so they have a few situational edges in this game where they've already gotten a game out of their belt. It was one of the earlier games yesterday. So that is all fairly good for Notre Dame. But then again, North Carolina, they're playing in their home state, and you know they have a huge fan base there. So you know the North Carolina fans are going to show up for this game, even though Notre Dame travels pretty well as well. But this is basketball and not football, so probably less so. And North Carolina, we know what they're trying to do here, man. They got to win. I mean, they're one of the first couple teams out of the tournament right now, so they really got to win here. We'll see what happens. That doesn't really mean that they're going to cover a big spread, though. They're up from 7 to 8.5 with juice, so we'll see what happens there with North Carolina. The pressure is going to be on them. I don't really know if I would want to lay all those points with them, but they should be able to get that win. I mean, because they're going to be the more desperate team there. Cal and Stanford. Stanford up from 4.5 to 5 with juice. These teams did play, I think, at least once. They might have played twice because this is a rivalry game. This is very weird to see this in the ACC, man. Either way would be really weird, but the ACC is actually even worse. Oh, yeah, you're two Pacific Coast teams, the Pacific Coast rivalry, and you're in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Totally makes sense to everybody, of course, although maybe they're calling it the American Coast Conference. I don't know what the fuck they're calling it now. Where is this game even? I don't even know. But Cal, they played yesterday, so yeah, they do have a little bit of an advantage here because neither of these teams coming into this tournament were going to be used to playing in an ACC tournament in North Carolina, right? So California got that game out of the way yesterday, so that's a little bit of an edge to them, but the problem is that game went into double overtime, so the fatigue could be a little bit of a factor here for Cal as well, and Stanford is the better of the two teams, so I could see arguments both for and against Cal in this game. And as far as Stanford, yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that they're coming into this game cold as far as the tournament is concerned. So, again, we'll see what happens. Not a play for me. And then Syracuse also played yesterday, and I was pretty surprised. They got the upset of Florida State last night. I thought Florida State would be able to get that done. I really don't think Syracuse is a very good team this year. They're getting SMU, who is technically still a bubble team, so SMU does have that to play for, at least as far as, like, they're definitely going to be incentivized to need to win this game. But they're also laying 8.5, and it's down to 8.5 with less juice. Again, Syracuse has that game out of the way, and they're used to playing in this venue where SMU, they're new to the ACC entirely, so they're not even used to playing in this tournament. So there are definitely some disadvantages here for SMU. And yes, they need to win the game potentially to try to get that bubble resume padded a bit. They definitely can't afford to lose this game, but then the pressure is going to be on them a little bit. So again, we'll see what happens. Moving over to the Big 12, Cincinnati, they won the game yesterday. They won for me. That was my one win, so easy win for them, which is good. I mean, they get that first game out of the way. This is a Cincinnati team that actually likes to play slow and likes to play defense, even though they did put up a lot of points against a bad OK State team yesterday. Cincinnati, a lot of scoring and transition yesterday, which is pretty much what they do. A lot of dunks from Cincinnati. They're not going to be able to do all that against Iowa State. Iowa State, of course, not going to turn it over as much as Oklahoma State did. They play better defense. Iowa State up from 6.5 to 9 here, so the money really coming in on Iowa State here. I do think Iowa State's a little bit underrated in a way because most of their losses this year were due to injury issues where they just did not have their full team. And when they have their full team, their full roster, they've only lost 2 games, although one of them was the final game of the year against BYU. But maybe Iowa State didn't need that win, and that BYU team has had a lot of momentum. So who knows? It's actually strange that Iowa State's fallen down to whatever seed they are here where they're playing in the second day. Kind of strange to see that. I mean, I don't expect them to get upset by Cincinnati here. And Iowa State with, what's their coach's name there? Otzelberger or whatever his name is. TJ Otzenberger. I forget his name. He's a good tournament coach. And this is a weird stat that Iowa State has won the Big 12 tournament 5 of the last 11 years. So they seem to care more about winning this tournament than most teams really do. And of course, I mean, this tournament is not everything. I mean, you want to gear up for the main event there. And Iowa State has fallen short in that thing. Although Iowa State, I think this year they do have one of their better teams when they're healthy, and they are right now. So we'll see what happens. But Cincinnati does have that one game out of the way, so they're accustomed to the venue now, and it was an easy win for them, so they're not really going to be tired. So a little bit of an advantage to Cincinnati for that reason, but Iowa State, definitely the better team. But then again, Cincinnati probably going to have a bit of motivation. It's because I think they are kind of considered to be a bubble team, and they're really going to need to win like a whole string of games here to even get like back in that picture, really. But they would have to win this game to do that, obviously. And for Iowa State, I mean, yes, they're a program that does concentrate on winning this tournament, which is kind of weird because as far as the NCAA tournament is concerned, if they lose this game, it's not really going to affect them that much. So we will see. So it's you got really strange situations going on when you get to the conference tournaments, man. Colorado also played yesterday, and they beat TCU, almost blew the game. Colorado way ahead in that game and almost blew it at the end. TCU, in my opinion, is the better of those two teams, and they just didn't have a good game, and they almost were able to turn it around. West Virginia hasn't played yet. West Virginia up from 4.5 to 6 here. Colorado is now used to the venue because they played yesterday, so a little bit of an advantage to them. But West Virginia probably wants to make sure they're going to be in the tournament. So I think they will be, but they can't really afford to lose this game. And as long as they win this game, I think they won't really have to sweat. So that is a little bit of an incentive there for West Virginia. But you're talking about a West Virginia team that I think is a bit overrated as well, and they're more of a defensive team, and you're asking them to lay points against a team that already has a game out of the way in this venue. It's a little bit of an ask, so we'll see what happens there. And sort of a similar setup with Kansas State and Baylor. Kansas State won yesterday, which I expected. I mean, they were the favorite yesterday. They got it done against Arizona State, I believe. Baylor now coming into this. Baylor, actually very similar to this game, in that Baylor is in those like kind of last 4 teams in the round of 64 right now in the bracketologies, in mine as well. I think they're a little bit more secure than West Virginia in my opinion, but they're both pretty similar as far as that's where they are sitting in the tournament right now. And it would definitely be helpful for them to win these games. I think West Virginia's opponent is a bit easier than Baylor's is. I think Kansas State is better than Colorado, and Kansas State's a little bit undervalued. Although it's strange to me that the line is about the same, and the odds makers are kind of telling you that West Virginia is, I guess, like, well, I mean, I think Baylor is the better team over West Virginia, so I guess it makes sense that Baylor would be a similar favorite that as West Virginia is, playing a better opponent than who West Virginia is playing. So that does make sense, I guess. But Baylor, I mean, again, similarly, they probably can't afford to lose this game, although losing to Kansas State would be a little bit more tolerable, I think, from the committee's perspective than losing to Colorado, even though Kansas State's resume is not very good. Kansas State is a more talented team than what they've shown this year. Baylor, still going to want to get the job done here, but Baylor laying points with Baylor against a Kansas State team that is already familiar with the venue because they played yesterday, and it's in Kansas City, so you know they got fans showing up there. Even though Baylor, West Virginia, I mean, these are teams that have traveling fan bases as well. But Baylor, they also play a slow-down style, which makes it a little bit more difficult for them to cover a big number. So, again, we'll see what happens. I would, if you asked me, I mean, I would expect West Virginia and Baylor to win, obviously, because they're both the favorites. But crazy things happen in these tournaments. You never know. And, again, we will see what happens. And, again, both of those teams are at the disadvantage of not having played yet in this tournament up against teams that did. Same thing goes for Kansas and UCF. UCF played yesterday and kind of unexpectedly, in my opinion, beat Utah. Even though UCF was considered to be the better team for a while, they were not as far as the odds makers are concerned yesterday, but they got the win. Strange matchup yesterday with two teams that are kind of new to this conference, although Utah, I think, newer to the conference. Now Kansas up from 8 to 9.5 here. Kansas, a staple of this conference. Kind of weird to see them having to play this early, but the way that they've not done well this year, I mean, it's more expected that you'd see Kansas earlier in this tournament than Iowa State, because Iowa State was one of, like, the top 10 teams for a while, whereas Kansas really only was, like, towards the beginning of the season. Kansas, we know they've been down for a while, but I think they've been underperforming as far as what their talent level is concerned. And even though UCF is accustomed to this venue now because they played yesterday, so that is a little bit of an advantage. Kansas, I just think, is too much better than they are. And these teams played twice this year, and Kansas annihilated UCF at UCF, which that was a game where I was on Kansas for a multitude of reasons, but it was a bad spot for UCF, and Kansas had played at UCF last year and didn't do that well. So I thought it lined up nicely for Kansas to kind of refocus for multiple reasons. Kansas was in a focus spot in that one as well. Then when UCF played at Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse, Kansas was in a bad spot, and UCF played them really, really tight, and that was the most recent matchup. So I think Kansas is going to maybe take them more seriously for that reason. I would lean to Kansas in this one. I expect them to win this game rather easily. I mean, they're undervalued in my opinion at this point, so we'll see what happens there. The American Athletic finally kicks off, which is interesting that it's at the Super Pit in Denton, Texas. So does that mean that North Florida is actually hosting this tournament, or is it like the A-Sun where like the top two teams are each hosting kind of like half of it up until they get to face that particular team that gets through that half? Maybe that's what's going on, because I wouldn't imagine that the 2 seed in the conference would be hosting the entire thing. That wouldn't really make sense. So maybe North Texas is hosting like one side of everything, and then Memphis is hosting the other side of everything up until they get to like the finals or something. I don't know what's happening, but this game is at North Texas, and it's Charlotte against Rice, so it's a closer spot for Rice because they're in Texas, they're in Houston, so going up to Denton, not really that far. Rice, well, you know, I think it's probably like, 5-6 hours maybe, so a little bit far. Texas is huge. Rice, 3.5-point favorite here. They are the better team. And Charlotte, the total bottom of the barrel in this conference. We'll see what happens there. I mean, I would expect Rice probably gets out of there with the win, but who knows. SEC is where I'm going to have some plays here, man. First one up is Arkansas, -4.5. And I know this line's up from 2 to 4 with juice, or 4.5. Money is coming in on Arkansas against South Carolina. And yes, I know South Carolina, they like to slow the game down. They like to play defense. So it could get a little bit dicey when you're laying points, but we're not laying that many points here. Arkansas is the better team, and I think this is a revenge spot for Arkansas, man. I think this revenge spot actually does matter, and I think Arkansas, while I have them pretty securely in the tournament right now, I have them as one of the last, I have them, I think, as the very last bye into the round of 64 right now, so they don't want to lose this game, and not only do they not want to lose to South Carolina, who's the last place team in the SEC, although to show you how good the SEC is, I actually think LSU is worse than South Carolina, and South Carolina is like in the top 70 in Ken Palm's rankings, and I think Arkansas is like 40th. LSU, I think, is a little bit lower than South Carolina, but that's how good the SEC is. The worst two teams are actually decently competitive teams, pretty competitive. Arkansas, yeah, they got some nice wins down the stretch here, but they can't really afford to lose to South Carolina here, man, as far as their tournament resume is concerned. I think they know that, so maybe the pressure's on, but I think they're also going to be focused and readjust here because they had a horrific loss at South Carolina 3 games ago. South Carolina was actually a slight favorite in this game, but everybody was making fun of Arkansas for this, and they haven't lost since this game. This game, I think, was a wake-up call. I mean, Arkansas was losing by more than 30 points in this game. Late in the game, down the stretch, they hadn't even cracked 30 until the final 6 minutes of the game. That was an embarrassing game for Arkansas, and since then they've turned it on and won 2 straight games against Vandy and Mississippi State, but now they get that team again that totally embarrassed them. I think they're going to be out for revenge here. They are not going to want to go down in this round of the tournament, man. Absolutely no way. South Carolina, I mean, yeah, they'd like to, play spoiler or whatever, but I don't think that's a huge motivator here. Arkansas is the better of these two teams. They're the better defense, even though both these teams are more defense-oriented than offense-oriented. Makes it a little bit dicey to lay points, but again, the spread isn't that high, even though it's gone up a little bit. I think the 2 was actually really, really low. I think 4.5 is about right. I think Ken Baum has Arkansas winning this game by around 4. I agree with all of that. I think it's a big revenge motive for Arkansas. I think they get it done. I think they're the team that has all the adjustments to make here. And I think that's what happens with South Carolina. I mean, everything that they did worked against Arkansas. So you have nothing to change, basically, if you're South Carolina. Even though they finished the season nicely. A lot of times, both of these teams finish the season with like a decent run where they won a couple of their final games, but still, a a lot of times you don't want to play in a team that finished the season like really, really hot. And I don't really think either of these teams did, but they were a little bit better in their last couple of games, let's say. On the next game up, I'm going to be on Texas plus the points. So 2 games in a row in the SEC, I got money here. Vandy up from Pick'em to 2 with juice, but it looks like the money's coming back in on Texas, man. That line, I think, has gone too far as well. 67% of the tickets on Vandy, 59% of the cash coming in on Texas. Now, the one problem here I forgot to mention, this tournament is in Nashville, Tennessee, so this is a semi-home game for Vandy. I don't think it's at their campus, but it is in their home city. It's at Bridgestone Arena, so that is not Vandy's home arena, I don't believe, but still, Vandy, they're a team in Nashville, so they're in their home city. So, yeah, they're going to draw, but Texas, I mean, they're going to travel, but Texas is in absolute desperation mode, and I know that's been the case for a while, but Vandy, most of the bracketologists have them pretty securely in. I have them like as a 9 or 10 seed now. I have them pretty securely in because they've had a nice run down the stretch. So Vandy, I think, has less to worry about. Texas, you're giving them points here, even though I know it is at Nashville. And Vandy, when they hosted Texas at Vandy, they were a 3.5-point favorite. So maybe the line does somewhat make sense. I think it should be a little bit lower than this. KenPom has Vandy winning this game by 1. I'm going to take the 2 with Texas, though. Like I said, I mean, this is Texas's last straw, man. I mean, maybe it was just in their mind that, well, we do have another game, to try to fix these things. Like, we do have another game. And when you have a team that finished a season this bad, I think having a little bit of extra time off, even though it's only been a couple of days, that can help them kind of just forget about it and fix some things. It almost like turns into like almost like a bye or like a semi-bye. So I think Texas is going to fix some things. They lost that game at Vandy as well, so I think Texas is going to have the adjustments to make as well. And then if you look at KenPom here, I think I have it up, right? This game looks really, really nice as far as Texas is concerned, as far as KenPom's luck ratings. He has Texas as only 1 ranking spot lower than Vandy, so very, very close to Vandy in the rankings. He's got Vandy 84th in the nation in luck, and Texas 340th. So he's telling you that Texas has way underperformed this year and that Vandy has overperformed a bit. And then both of these teams decent on offense and defense, but you're getting Texas as the better defense and getting points here. So even though Vandy's offense is a little bit better, kind of a classic type of matchup where Texas is the better defense and Texas likes to play slower than Vandy does. And that's also, I think, why the public is going to kind of not want Texas in a game like this, because they've just looked like ass and they can't score. So they don't profile as a team that the public is going to want to come in and take, but they profile as a team that I want to take. Playing ugly defensive games, and this is like their last stand, basically. I think you're going to finally see an effort out of this team, man. They need the game more than Vandy does, and they're getting points. They don't even need to actually win the game. Although at +2, you're kind of expecting them to win, but that is what we got going on there. LSU is against Mississippi State. Mississippi State up from 7.5 to 8.5. I think Mississippi State has fallen out of the rankings over the last couple of games here. They're kind of falling a little bit. I don't expect them to lose to LSU, though. I mean, as I said, I think LSU is actually worse than South Carolina. I think they're the least of all the SEC teams. We'll see what happens here, but don't have a huge read on this game. None of these teams have played yet in this tournament either, by the way. I don't think this tournament has started until today, so no real advantage there one way or the other. Mississippi State, the better team. I don't expect them to lose this game. Whether or not they cover, who knows. Oklahoma and Georgia is interesting because these two teams are both on the bubble, although Georgia with a really, really nice run down the stretch. Georgia has basically, I think, secured themselves a tournament spot at this point. I think they've won their last 4 or 5 games. Georgia's up from 2 to 3 here with juice, so the money actually coming in on Georgia. 71% of the cash on them, but 50% of tickets evenly split. The one thing I will say is that Oklahoma and Texas are new to the SEC, so they're not used to playing in this SEC tournament, but the fact that it's in the South, I mean, I don't really think that that's like that much of a big deal. Like, I don't think it's a huge stretch to ask them to go to Nashville and play here, so I don't think that's that strange. So I don't think they're going to be totally out of their comfort zones here. Texas, of course, lost to Oklahoma in the final of the regular season, which I think was actually at Texas, which was crazy that Texas lost that game. Texas really got to do something here today, man. Oklahoma, I mean, I actually kind of disagree with the market move here just because Georgia, again, I think they're the better team, and they're more used to playing in an SEC tournament, obviously, but they're pretty comfortably in the tournament now, whereas Oklahoma, you're giving them points, and they, I think, need to keep winning to keep trying to pad their resume. I mean, that win against Texas is good. I think it puts them in like the first four, so they're in like the last four into the tournament right now. But I think they're going to want to win this game. But I guess both these teams are going to be motivated just because both teams probably feel like they got to keep padding their resume. So it's a tough matchup to gauge, although I think the need is a little bit stronger with Oklahoma. We got the Mountain West here, which is at the Thomas and Max. This is another one of those Las Vegas tournaments, which I believe is actually UNLV's home arena, if I'm not mistaken. So UNLV actually hosts this tournament, which is kind of a weird, unfair advantage to UNLV. Although they're not a very good team this year. Wyoming and San Jose State, the first game up, just really, really not a good game. None of these games are going to be good today, man. This is actually the competitive game out of the three of them. San Jose State actually, I believe, swept the season series, but they've been dealing with some injuries. I don't know if they have those guys back or not, but if they do, I do think they are the slightly better team. I don't think that those wins that they had over Wyoming were that misleading. San Jose State up from 1-1 with juice. Both these teams like to play slow. They both are very, very ugly. They play an ugly style of basketball. They like to play slow. They go on scoring droughts. I think Wyoming is a worse scoring team probably. You'd have to look at KenPom, but San Jose State is the better team. I kind of expect them to win. It looks like the money is coming in on them a little bit, up from 1-1 with juice. Fresno and Nevada. I mean, the game's being played in Las Vegas, so it's in Nevada's home state at least, so they're fairly far from Reno, but I expect Nevada to run away with this game. Fresno's really, really bad. Nevada up from 11.5 to 13 with juice. Nevada beat Fresno State, both meetings by double digits. I don't really think there was much misleading about that. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about that game. UNLV actually is down from 13.5 to 13, so some money coming in on Air Force. Don't know why, because Air Force has been even worse than Fresno. UNLV and Nevada both like to kind of play slow, though, so asking them to lay huge numbers like this is a little bit of a stretch. But Fresno and Air Force both really, really bad. And UNLV playing like basically, I think this is their home arena, like I said, so a little bit of an extra edge for them there as well. But no way I'm going to touch that. Oh, my God, we have way too much to talk about here, man. I don't even know if I can get through all of this. The Big Ten, Iowa and Ohio State. I mean, Iowa actually looked motivated in their last couple of games to try to get wins in their last two games, almost beating Michigan State and then beating me, going on the road and beating Nebraska. So they're actually showing some heart now, and they show that they wanted to get into this thing, and now they are in. They got into the Big Ten tournament, but Ohio State, they got to pad their tournament resume, man. They're the better team. They're laying 5. These games are in Indianapolis. Don't have a huge read on this. I think the need is more on Ohio State, of course, because they're trying to make sure they get in. I have them in the last 4 into the tournament right now, but we will see. Rutgers against USC. Rutgers is flipped from a 1-point dog to a pick 'em with juice. USC is, of course, new to this whole thing, new to this tournament, having to play in Indianapolis. Kind of weird for them. Rutgers does have those star players that might actually put them over the edge there. The money coming in on them. Maybe for those reasons, but don't have a good read on that. Northwestern up from 3.5 to 4 against Minnesota. So Northwestern, oddsmakers telling you they're better than Northwestern, or better than Minnesota, excuse me. I think Northwestern, kind of an undervalued team, man. I mean, KenPom actually has them in like the 40-something like ranking spot, but some of that was with Barnheiser, their best player, and he went down not that long ago, so they are playing without him, but the oddsmakers is telling you that even without him, they're the better team. I kind of agree, and I do think they're undervalued, and Minnesota's kind of made some more noise recently with Garcia there, so they seem like they're going to be the team that the public kind of wants to jump in and maybe like think that there's value taking the points at Minnesota. I would kind of look the other way there. Butler's a 1.5-point favorite, down to 1.5 with reduced juice against Providence. I think Providence has that name recognition because they've been better than this in recent years, but they are definitely down this year, and I think Butler is kind of more on the upswing, so I kind of do lean to Butler in this game, but I really don't have a good read on this. These games are at Madison Square Garden in New York, which people are going to complain that that's a bit of an advantage to St. John's once they enter the tournament, but we will see. And then my final play is on Georgetown minus 3.5. They're up from 3.5 to 3.5 with juice. They're playing DePaul, and DePaul actually swept the season series against Georgetown. And when you have a situation like this where Georgetown is actually the better of the two teams and they lost both regular season matchups, That's a game where you want to look to that team to get that double revenge, man, because they're the better team. You know that they're going to have reasons to readjust here. I think if you dig into the box scores there, I think those games are really misleading. Excuse me. I think in one game, DePaul shot like ridiculously well, and in the other, Georgetown shot really, really poorly. Something like that. So again, it's double revenge. Georgetown is actually the better of these two teams, and that's kind of where you want to look. I mean, Gonzaga got it done in a spot like that last night, but DePaul is such a bad team, man. I mean, Georgetown, they're kind of on the upswing as well, even though DePaul had a better season than they did last year, but that's not saying much. Georgetown should get it done here, man. And then Seton Hall and Villanova. Villanova up from 10-11 with juice. That's just how far Seton Hall has fallen in a short period of time. This is going to be an ugly, ugly game. Total down from 129 to 126. 129 juice to the under to 126. Really, really horrendous, ugly game. I don't want to try to come in and and lay points like this, even though Villanova kind of considered to be a bubble team now, and Seton Hall is just this bad, but two slow, ugly teams like this, I don't want to lay double digits. No way. And then we got in Atlantic City, the MAAC continues with some of the better teams entering the fray here, with Quinnipiac up from 7.5 to 9 here. A huge favorite over Rider. Rider and Sacred Heart both played yesterday. I told you I thought Sacred Heart would win. I thought Rider maybe had a shot because they played decently well as an underdog, even though I kind of thought Siena would actually wind up getting the job done in the end. Rider got the job done there. Quinnipiac is the way better team, though, and there's not much to take away from their loss to Fairfield in their final game. Quinnipiac, like I said, I bet against them because they didn't need that game whatsoever. They were already the 1 seed here, so it didn't matter. I expect them to win, even though Rider did get that game out of the way. Merrimack up from 1.5 to 2.5 with juice. This game's a little bit more sketchy, I think, because Sacred Heart got that nice win last night. Their offense is actually fairly good, fairly efficient, and Merrimack, and these are the quarterfinals, so I don't know what's going on. There is another half to this tournament, probably tomorrow or something. So I think Merrimack is actually probably the 3 seed because I think Marist probably got the 2. Merrimack may be the best team in this conference power rating-wise, but they don't get an easy matchup here. And Merrimack is new to this conference, so they're not used to playing in this venue as much as some of these other teams are. And Sacred Heart did get the win last night, so Merrimack at a little bit of a disadvantage for that reason, even though I think the numbers guys have driven that number up because they know Merrimack is actually the better of the two teams. Liberty up from 6.5 to 7 with juice in the Conference USA. Here, quarterfinals, which is in Huntsville, so another neutral site here. UTEP got the win against Sam Houston, which I actually thought Sam Houston was pretty live to win that game, and it didn't happen. UTEP got the job done. Liberty definitely the better team. UTEP is now used to this venue, though, because they played last night, but Liberty is such the better team. I don't think it should matter that much. Liberty up from 6.5 to 7 with juice. Should probably be able to get the win here. I think they're the best team in this conference. Jacksonville State gets an easier matchup, though, up from 6.5 to 8 against Florida International, who upset Western Kentucky last night. Kind of a ridiculous upset in a late game. But the fact that Florida International, even though that does mean they played in this venue last night, the fact that they put in that effort to pull off that upset, I don't think it puts them in a great spot here. Jacksonville State, even though they're coming in not having played yet in this tournament, they're the better team. You got to think they should win. And then in the WAC, you got Utah Tech, who somehow won against Southern Utah. I don't know if Southern Utah is injured or what that was. Utah Tech is awful. I mean, Utah Valley State should win this game pretty easily, up from 11 to 12.5. Don't have a whole lot else to say about this. This is at the Orleans in Las Vegas, where it usually is. Grand Canyon, I think, is the best team in this conference. So they get a more difficult opponent here in Texas Arlington, who is certainly way better than Utah Tech. But Grand Canyon up from 8 to 8.5. They should be able to get the job done here. Hopefully, because I don't think Utah Valley State is as good as Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon a little bit down this year, though, I think, from what they were the last year or two. And then the Big West is starting as well. That's in Henderson, Nevada, so outside of Las Vegas by a little bit. Bakersfield and UC Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara up from 4.5 to 4.5 with juice. Bakersfield is pretty bad, so it's kind of weird to see this line not being higher than it is because Santa Barbara, pretty competitive team, so that line looks kind of odd. And then Cal Poly being up from 2.5 to 3 against UC Davis also looks pretty weird. Oddsmakers telling you Cal Poly is actually the better team, which I'm not even sure that that's accurate. And then the Big Sky Championship is tonight here. Montana and Northern Colorado. So again, Cal Poly, I mean, that line looks so misleading that That might be the way that you want to lean in that one because I think they have the worst record, yet they're favored. And then we have Montana, Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado from 2.5 to 2.5 with juice in the Big Sky there. That's in the final. Northern Colorado is the better of those two teams. But I think it is pretty close. Both teams won, I think, on the road against each other during the regular season. I don't know what's going to happen, man, because both teams won yesterday. I think they both won somewhat easily yesterday as well. So the money's coming in a little bit in Northern Colorado. They are the better team, but it's not that significant. So difficult to gauge that. And then we have Grambling and Southern in the SWAC. Southern a 6.5-point favorite. They're the best team in the SWAC, but that's not really saying that much. Grambling did play last night, and then Jackson State is playing against Florida A&M. Florida A&M got a little bit of a scare. They were losing early on against Prairie View. Florida A&M was able to get that thing done, though, and win as the favorite. So now they got a game out under their belt, and so does Grambling. But Southern is the better team, so I kind of expect Southern to get that one. But Jackson State down from 5 to 4, so some money coming in on A&M. A&M, again, they did have that scare as a favorite yesterday, so they may be the right side in this one and the way to look there. The final in the Southland is happening with Lamar and McNeese. Lamar got the job done as the 2 seed. McNeese, the best team in this conference, obviously. They're up from 12 to 13 here. They should be able to get this done. I mean, they better get it done because people do want to see them get into the tournament. And they had the earlier game last night. It was a pretty easy win for them, whereas Lamar went right to the wire against Nichols. So Lamar could be the more tired of the two teams as well. So it should be a bit of an advantage to McNeese. The number on them has gone up a little bit. And then, in the MEAC, we have Norfolk State against Maryland Eastern Shore. Norfolk State is the best team in this conference. They're a double-digit favorite, up from 15 to 16.5. Maryland Eastern Shore is terrible. So, again, not interesting. South Carolina State is, I think, the 2 seed in this conference, and Coppin State is just awful as well. So, again, kind of weird that we have if these are the 1 and 2 seeds, it's kind of weird that they're both playing here in the quarterfinals, and I guess they must split their games up across 2 days or something. I don't know, but those are 2 huge mismatches, even in the MEAC. Maryland Eastern Shore and Coppin State are both horrible teams. And then we have the Patriot League final. Navy having upset Bucknell. This conference is awful this year, man. And then American, who I've been saying is overrated, they're going to be hosting this game. This game is at home, so the oddsmaker's telling you there's not even that much of a difference between these two teams. That's how not great American is. If the oddsmakers are telling you Navy is almost as good as they are, American up from 3 to 3 with juice, or Navy may even be the better team. That's just crazy to think that. American being at home, I would expect them to get this done, but you never know. And whichever is the case, I think whoever wins this is going into the first 4 in Dayton, man. This conference is so down this year. And American just beat Colgate, who was like the team that had won this conference, I think, 3 straight years. So they're coming off a big win as well. So kind of hard to read there. And then that's going to do it for college basketball, man. So I'll give you my other play, which is the Minnesota T-Wolves in the NBA plus the points. I think you can wait on this a little bit and see where the line goes because this is against Denver. I think Denver's in a bad spot, and we'll see where the line goes there with Denver. I don't know what's going to happen there, but we'll see. Again, my college basketball plays are Arkansas minus 4.5, Texas plus 2, Georgetown minus 3.5. And I'll be back and talk about the NBA card and the NHL card. And again, we will see what happens with those with what happens throughout the day, man. Hopefully I have a better day than yesterday. And that's going to do it for now, and I'll give that NBA analysis tonight, and we'll see where that line goes. I don't know if I want to play that Minnesota T-Wolves just yet because I don't think the line could really get that much lower. I think it could only get higher because I think it's question marks with Jokic and maybe a couple other Denver guys, and we'll see what they're going to do there. Although I guess if those guys don't play, the number could go down a little bit, but I don't see it happening. See it going down that much. I think that game is in Denver, so we will see. Tower Gang Tone on Twitter, of course. I'll be back in the evening to talk about those. And then Tower Gang is tonight. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. 9:11 p.m. Eastern. You get to laugh with us. We're the most hilarious, offensive podcast in existence. And if you subscribe to the Patreon, you get the second half of the episode. So like extra content. You get the pre-show. Hang out with us in a Telegram. That's going to do it for now, man. Tower Gang. Peace, baby.